Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnik, and I'm co-founder and managing partner of Financing Solutions. Financing Solutions is the leading provider of lines of credit to nonprofits. Our line of credit program is easy, inexpensive, and costs nothing until used, making it a great cash backup plan for your nonprofit. If you'd like to learn more about the program, please visit us at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. And if you decide to apply today, we will even give you a $250 credit on file. Or feel free to give us a call at 862-207-4118. Just remember, the time to set up your line of credit is today, not when you actually have the emergency come up. And if the past year told us anything, it's a good idea to have a backup plan. Today, I am excited to be speaking with Beate Chelette. Beate, I know I pronounced your first name wrong, so give it to me again.
It's Beate Chelette. I think you did a really awesome first shot at it because, who gets everything right the first time?
Well, hold that thought throughout this podcast. So
exactly, leading right into it.
There we go. And Beate is from Chelette Enterprises Incorporated, and that's her company. So before we kind of get into today's topic, maybe you could tell us a little more about yourself.
Yes, I'll be happy to. So I'm known as the growth architect, and I am known as the growth architect because I invented something called the 5-Star Success Blueprint, which is a methodical approach to growing a business, including a nonprofit business. And my vision and mission in life really is to help visionaries and leaders to make their impact by providing them with the strategies and the tools and the blueprints. Because to me, I don't sell the dream, I sell the tools.
Yeah, I think that, I think this is like my 41st nonprofit MBA podcast. And I deal with executive directors every day from nonprofits and sometimes board members too. To give some feedback to our listeners, I think that nonprofits don't pay enough attention to the tools, the resources, the strategies that for-profit businesses use. The number one thing that a for-profit business is concerned with is growth. It is their top criteria. Now, they learn later to be more concerned with net profit, but right, but growth is really critical. And so I love the idea that we could have you talk a little bit about, the 5-Star Success Blueprint that you use, that you can apply to both for-profit and nonprofit businesses. So today's topic, how to grow and scale your nonprofit based on the 5-Star Success Blueprint. That's our topic for today. And so, let's kind of start off with taking a step back and say, and where did you kind of come up with this process?
So for me, it was always important that I have this sense for business that is so easy for me that I cannot believe other people don't know how to do this. And so eventually you step into that, Steve, and you go, I wonder, maybe this is my super skill. But what happens is when I hear people talk about their ideas, their passion, and their vision, what happens in my head, I immediately sort of get the bullet point list, right? It'll spit out phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the system. I have a system formula, and it is very clear to me when I hear somebody talk to say, well, that's your hook. Well, that's the unique thing. You need to be paying attention to that. And so the more I did that, the more I recognized, Steve, that there's a cadence into how these steps follow each other, and that most of the mistakes are made that either people don't follow the steps sequentially in order from 1 to 5, or they start at step five, and they figure, and then they don't understand why 2 or 3 is not working. Or they all focused on step number 1 with it, which is the idea, which a lot of nonprofits are doing. And they're so enamored with their idea and their vision that they completely forget to put, as you said, the process behind it. And then I find out that they're managing by email, a team of 120 people. And I'm going like, what? And no wonder that all the time is spent meeting and getting each other on the same page, because there's no centralized way to manage the information. And so business is business, no matter what the goal is. While for a nonprofit, the goal obviously is not to make profits, but the goal of a nonprofit is to make an impact. Now, in the way we look at business growth, there's no difference in whether you want to make an impact, reach more people, serve more clients, or make more money. You still have to follow the exact same steps. It's just that what your idea is and why you're doing it changes some of the elements of how we go about setting up the plan, but the plan remains the exact same. So I came up with it, Steve, to sum this all up, because I saw that people think that they're so unique and so different, and that they feel that what they've done, nobody has ever done before, that they get caught up in the minutia of one thing, but never get the whole thing off the ground. And then they don't make the impact.
I love it. I love the idea because, it's if you have, okay, so there's three words that I will use for, when I'm talking to a business owner, that's younger and inexperienced, and that is, you either have to build processes, or I change the word sometimes with processes with systems. Mm-hmm. And sometimes if you have somebody, this is what I found, if you have somebody who doesn't like the word processes and systems, I'll use the word best practices. And so, you can think of any of those three words that resonate the most with you. But what I like about and I don't know your 5-star success blueprint yet, and that's what we're going to touch upon now. What I like about is, if you're running a nonprofit, you don't have to run around figuring it out for yourself. You can just follow this process and then start executing. So let's just start off by telling everybody, tell us the 5-star, the 5 words or 5-star processes.
Hey, I'd be happy to. So the first star is the idea. It always starts with the idea. The more passionate you are about the idea, the clearer the idea is, the clearer you are who this idea is for, and what problem this idea solves, the better it will be for the nonprofit in the long run, right? So a lot of nonprofits are actually very good at this, because this is what basically drives everything. So that's the step number one. In star number 2, we talk about the offer. So the offer is the product, the service. That's what we are providing our clients, our customers, our community with. And again, here in the offer, you want to be paying attention to what problem does this offer actually solve. Here's already where we're seeing the first discrepancy, right? Where sometimes there might be a donor who has a particular idea that might not be entirely aligned with the vision of the original idea. Somebody comes in, wants to give you a grant for something that's not entirely aligned with what you had, or they want you to build up something new because it's part of their legacy project. And so in the offer, it's really critical to make sure that, because remember, we're talking about this alignment, it's 5 stars. So and the stars eventually, when you take a line and you draw it from star tip to star tip, turns into a full circle. And then you'll start all over again. It's constantly in motion. So the offer has to be aligned with what the idea is. The third piece is the systems, the formula, or best practices. And here and it doesn't come until the idea and the offer is clear, because first we need to know, what are we doing? Who are we doing it for? What are we selling, or what are we offering? And then and only then can we figure out what systems do we even need to build to formulate that. And here, a lot of times mistakes, Steve, that I see very frequently are that nonprofits go and they look at what's out there, and then they build their business around a solution that they purchased. And then that solution isn't the right solution for them. So their business doesn't do, the nonprofit's not growing and people have difficulties using it. So I'm going to give one example. So, I mean, I love Microsoft products, but Microsoft Teams is a very steep learning curve for most teams. A lot of people that are, especially have a lot of line staff, with a lot of nonprofits do have the boots on the ground. To expect that somebody like that could just get into Microsoft Teams and know how to utilize that is preposterous. I mean, let me just put it out there in no uncertain terms. So you might think that the CEO or the executive leadership team may have had great experiences with this at the organizations they were with before, but that tool might not be the right tool or the right system for what you're trying to achieve right now. So I see this all the time in nonprofits, that I go in and I look at the systems and I say, do you people actually use this? And they go, no. And then they build patches around the systems because they nobody's ever explained it, or the learning curve is too big, or there's too much to do, and they just don't have the time to do that. So systems have to help. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, let me add to that, because I think you really brought up a good point. So when I first started Financing Solutions, we used Microsoft Dynamics, which was a CRM customer relationship management product. And the thing about the Microsoft Dynamic is it's very robust and you can do a ton of things with it. But later on, I moved to another CRM system that was specifically built for my industry, and they had already thought of everything that I needed for my industry. So, like, if you correlate it back to a nonprofit, there is just great nonprofit software where people have done all of the work knowing already what you're going to need, and you just plug right into that. And I'm amazed, because when I asked the new CRM company that I've been with for a couple of years now, I need to do this, they exactly speak our language. They know exactly, and they've already done it because someone has asked them. Whereas Microsoft Dynamics, it was, you had to build it yourself. There's no technical support, and it's also more expensive. So I agree. Like, my point of saying this is, like, there's a lot of really great software that actually can make your organization better right out of the box, because they're building processes and procedures and systems that you are going to need. And so I agree with you on 100%.
Yes, and I'm really glad you said that, this particular piece, Steve, that there are solutions that might not be the known popular solutions, let's just say like a HubSpot or like a Salesforce, but they're very specific for your industry that might not be as well known. But again, when I work with my clients and we do our strategy sessions where we are process mapping what they're even trying to achieve, once it's clear what the process map looks like, then we can say, well, how do we solve these individual pieces? And then we look specifically, because we have the process first, for the system that can actually then do.
Yeah. So let's be clear to our listeners. If they, let's just say you've gone through the idea, you've gone through the offer, the first two phases of your 5-star process, and now you're at the systems needed to, and let's say is, okay, how are we going to manage the relationships of our biggest donors and all our donors? How are we going to manage that relationship? So that type of system would mean a CRM system, a customer relationship management system. And that's what we're kind of talking about, where you would find a CRM system that you say is, okay, this is how we're going to manage our communication. We're going to record everything in here. We're going to keep notes. We're going to keep the address, their information, and we're going to use that same system to manage how many times we communicate with our big donors versus our small donors, because the communication's different. So good. What's the fourth step?
The fourth step is when we're looking now into teams. So this is all about workplace unification, and teams. So once we know the idea, once we have the offer, once we have the systems, now we know what kind of people we need. And again, a lot of times in nonprofits, they get the people before they get the systems. And then it gets very messy. But if you are clear what you have in your systems and what the capability of the system is, then you know exactly what the system or the process can do or your best practices can accomplish. And now you need to know who the people are that you need to fill certain functions. And what I liked about what you said, Steve, is that in the systems piece, the part really that's critical for a nonprofit is to think through what are the things that we need, right? We need our grassroots, we need our high touch for our high value donors. We need for our grants, we need to make sure we show the numbers and our impact. So we have to collect the data, our KPIs, our measurements, so people see that what we do really matters. We have to do our storytelling. So there's a lot of different pieces that you want to manage. And so when you have the system and the people that are working in the right positions to then fill certain functions or manage certain aspects of the system that are then congruent, now you really put your growth on steroids. And just in these two pieces alone, in updating systems or reorganizing the systems and making sure your organizational chart is aligned with that, you can oftentimes double your numbers and double your impact. Just that alone.
Yeah. I like what you said. I almost like when I would almost like put a slash next to teams, and that would be like teams/employees, because, if you want to initiate a project, you might find that you don't have either the right person. You might find that you can't afford the right person. And then maybe it sends you back to the systems, just saying, well, maybe we can use a software product to do what this person was going to do, which would make it more productive and efficient. So I think that the word teams is a lot nicer than employees. But that when you said that, I was thinking, oh yeah, like, okay, this is the vision of what we want to do. These are the systems we have in place. Okay, now what are the roles of the people that I'm going to need to do it? So I like that methodology you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And once you think about it that way and you think about the nonprofits, probably you spoke to yourself, Steve. Now, with that in mind, you look at them, you go, oh, I already know, because they only focused on the ideas, they never built the system. Or you said they hired the people before they had the systems in place. No wonder it's such a communication frenzy, because nobody really knows what they're doing because they're all in each other's way. So again, this is a very simple way to look at this, and yet often overlooked. And that brings us to the fifth star of the 5-star success blueprint, and that's the leader and leadership, the executive team. So the leader needs to be connected to the idea and to the team. That part is all about leadership. So idea, team, and leader, those three, in the 5-star success blueprint, that's one of the pillars. Then we have to have the system and the teams and the offer. And that is our business development piece, right? Because all of these things kind of have to work together. So when you look at the system, they all have to collaborate and overlap in certain areas to make sure your business development is working, your workplace unification is working, and your leadership piece is running smoothly.
Yeah, it's fascinating because, I don't, to our listeners, they don't know like my past history, but between my business partner and I, we've built 8 companies and over 25 years. And what was really interesting is when we went to build our 8th company, and Financing Solutions was our 7th company, and then we started this other company 4 years ago called Elite Funeral Funding. And what was interesting when I look back and when we started it, like we literally had that business up and running, and and producing revenue in 3 months when it would have normally taken us 3 years. And the reason why we got it up and running so quickly and revenue generating was because we followed this process. We had the idea, we knew what our offer was. We built systems right up front because we knew, okay, we need an accounting package. Okay, we need a CRM system. Okay, we need to define who's responsible for what and their job responsibilities and how we're going to measure them. And just like boom, boom, boom. And then we backfilled with, okay, the team. Okay, what's the team we're going to need? What are the responsibilities? And then the last thing was we put a person in place who was going to run the company,
Mm-hmm.
and they were the leader. And we went over, okay, this is the leadership skills that we're going to want in this person. So we naturally followed this process that you kind of talking about, and it made me think that if some of our listeners, if you went to start a brand new nonprofit again, probably with your experience, you probably would fall into the 5-star blueprint just the way you explained it as well. I mean, would you agree?
100%, yes. And that, I think, is a discipline as a business owner. And you said it so nicely. You said, well, you became such an expert at it, Steve, you and your partner, that you didn't even have to think about it, because it's
Yeah.
so, these stars are so ingrained in what you do, because you've done it so many times. This is like the zone of genius, the super skill. You just do it automatically. And that is the discipline as any leader, is to say, am I trying to reinvent the wheel here? Or
Yeah.
am I able to glean experience from someone who's done it before? Because at the end of the day, Steve, it's time or money. You're going to pay by the time you put in to figure it out, or you pay by getting somebody, a consultant or an expert on board who can help you to do this much quicker. It's your choice on how you're going to pay, but you're going to pay one way or another.
Yeah. I honestly, though, I wouldn't have mind having this, the 5-step blueprint process. It's nice to have a defined process down.
Yeah.
And I'm a process person. I'm a system person. I really believe, like the thing that I've really learned about nonprofits and about successful nonprofits and about successful small businesses is that it really comes down to great execution. And it's really, if you can execute really well, that's really going to be the key ingredient in your success. So like, to me, I want to get right down to the execution part, because honestly, once you come up with the idea, the worst thing that could happen to any nonprofit or small business is you keep coming up with more and more and more ideas. It really drives your staff crazy when you do stuff like that, because you have them going in too many different directions. And so, it's really good once you've gone to your execution and then gone from there. So anyway, so when you've been working with your clients on stuff like the 5-step process, what do you notice mistakes that they do prior to following the 5-step process?
So the mistakes I see most commonly are leading by committee and having too many people in that are participating in the decision making, even because people are generally wanting to be nice and friendly. In a nonprofit, it's all about our vision, so we want to get the buy-in constantly, and so a lot of big decisions are being pushed off further and further away because there's too many conflicting opinions, especially from people that don't know what they're talking about in a particular category. Like, for somebody who doesn't understand systems, don't ask them their opinion on the system. Just ask them figure out, do your personality assessments, see how they make their decisions and how they operate, and then you find the system with the subject matter experts that understand how someone like that most likely is to succeed. Don't ask that person. They don't know, otherwise they'd be using it. And number two is the just hurdle as it comes to the research that sometimes you need to do to really figure out what's right for us. What's the right process, the right system for us? So that, as I said, is often by a CEO or somebody who is confident, walks in, says, oh, I know exactly how we fix it. In my old company, we use this. And then it's interesting that you said Microsoft Dynamics, because I have a nonprofit that is using Microsoft Dynamics, and it is a disaster. A disaster to the point where employees are secretly using their own MailChimp accounts to get certain information out. I mean, that is disastrous for your organization. And the other part is the excessive meeting, by trying to bring people on the same page, because systems are not operating. No process mapping has ever been done. No, nothing has ever been even thought out. And then constantly patches are being deployed again and again to fix certain things. Another one I see is the lack of support and education in emerging leaders, the first level management, which I think is the biggest problem for any nonprofit, period. Period. These people get freshly promoted. They have no idea about what leadership is. They're excited. They finally went from this position into a manager position, and now they're managing mostly line staff, and it's a disaster because they don't have the tools. And the focus on high potential development is an epidemic. And I compare it, Steve, to why don't we take anyone and put him on the Formula One racetrack, put him in a race car, give him a helmet, and tell him, here's the gas, there's the brake, and see who doesn't crash. And then those who don't crash, we keep, and everybody else we just burn through. That's a very costly experiment to do. Why not allow emerging leaders to be properly educated and properly trained in your style according to the 5-star success blueprint? Because we know what we need to do so that more of them can perform more efficiently. So those are the biggest mistakes I see.
Yeah, I want to add to what you're saying. I did a really great podcast with a company that specializes in nonprofit CRM, and it's called Virtuous, VIRTO. I'm sorry, VIRTUOUS, and I was really impressed with that software, and they specifically focus on nonprofit. You may want to mention that to your client who's using Microsoft Dynamics.
I am. We're
Yeah.
actually going in on this project to help them with the CRM. So I haven't gotten the job yet, but that's fantastic.
Yeah,
See,
take a look at them, because
well,
what I really liked about it, the owner was on, Gabe Cooper, and what I really liked about it was that one of the things they really addressed is, and that's how I kind of knew to talk about it a little bit today earlier, and that is the different levels of communications and that you would send out to different people based, like, for example, if someone's giving you $1 million, you don't want to send out a communication to them every week like you do for someone who's giving you $25.
yeah.
So they have it built into their systems. And this is an idea, again, about that, they think through this stuff that only affects a nonprofit, whereas Microsoft Dynamics doesn't, do that. So, when you said the 5-step process, the thing that when you were saying it, I was looking at it, I was going to say, let's just say for me, maybe I'm not the best example, but the hardest part about this, the first hardest part is leadership to me. That's the hardest part. The second hardest part would be teams, and that would be, in my view, would be hiring the right people, or unfortunately, if we've hired the people that don't match our idea and offer after we've maybe redefined it, that would be the second hardest thing. Having to either redeploy people or unfortunately ask them to leave, which is, that's all,
Happens.
It happens, you always try to avoid that. A good leader tries to avoid that. But so tell me a success story. Now, do you think that I'm assuming it's much easier to implement this process if you haven't started the organization yet, instead of having to go back and change everything. Is that true or no?
Not necessarily. I think that, in our process, and what makes our process successful is that in the strategy piece or in the uncovery portion. So we don't make any assumptions. I don't know what's going on. I have to find out what's going on. And oftentimes the leader thinks it's one thing. I call this, they keep treating symptoms, but they don't know what the root of the problem
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
So we have found that in the uncovery, sometimes a leader thinks um, it's an issue with retention and HR, and the issue is that they have literally a racism problem from one group to another group, and because it is in such a critical function, that there is hostility, and therefore the middle is completely locked up, and the information just doesn't flow. If the information doesn't flow, the people on the ground are crying. The people above that level are raving what a great company it is, and the problem is like right there in the middle. And so the I think that this detachment, Steve, from judging it as good or bad or earlier or later is critical to, for leaders really to say, okay, I know there's an issue. Let's get the plane to 30,000 feet. Let's just fly over the land. Let's just look at the terrain. Let's see all the different airports that we could land in. And is it HR? Is it our systems? Is it our leadership? Is it the communication? And let's just map out all the different things that need to be aligned. And then we land the plane where our first priority is. And then we map out what comes after that, comes after that, comes after that. Because once you fix the first problem, a lot of times the other problems fall into place. It's like when you go to the chiropractor
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and they give you the adjustment and then the bone pops back in. Suddenly you walk straighter and your shoulders are not crooked anymore and your toe doesn't hurt and your elbow is not doing the twitch, and it's all based from one thing. So we want to leave enough room in there to say it's usually not a whole convoluted mess. Usually it's a core problem that shows up as symptoms and all these other things. So let's figure out what the core problem is, fix that first. And then let's shake the marionette and see that we get it to realign. And then let's see what else we need to be looking at in these kinds of different categories. So for me, this is the fun part because I happen to really love it, to go in and say, okay, what seems to be the problem? And then when we go in and we do our debrief after our uncovering before we go in the strategy, and we say, okay, here's what we found. A lot of times it's mind blowing. So they love the leadership, they love the vision, and they're happy to work there. They couldn't think of a better place to work, but there is like only these three problems that are so easy to solve. But they didn't think that was the
Yeah.
problem. So they keep fixing other things, but they never get to the root of the problem. Therefore, it compounds the problem and people get angry and angry until they leave. And that's the high retention. It's the result of not treating the root. And so now we are flying up to meet with them, do our strategy day, and do the first piece. And I am confident that once we fix this piece, that there's going to be a lot more lightness and enthusiasm because we are taking this clog out in the middle.
You ever been with a client that came on board and their idea and offer were pretty good, and you know, and like it's not so much the idea off, but their first two or three of the 5-star process was there, so you had to work on the other things more, or is it almost always it's always starting from scratch, going back to the idea and offer?
No, I think with nonprofits, what nonprofits usually get down really, really well are the first two, the idea and
Hmm.
the offer. I mean,
Oh,
most nonprofits I've worked with or
yeah.
talked to, They are very clear what they are, who they're serving, the community impact that they're making, what their place is. Most of them are super clear. I don't think that for someone like me who really helps with the process mapping and multiplying impact, that if that's not in place, that would be a tough place to start. I think for nonprofit, but I don't find that at all, Steve. And I don't know what your experience is in your career, but most nonprofits got the first two down.
Yeah.
Even leadership, oftentimes they got down.
Well, I agree with you. They have the vision, the idea, and the offer down very, very well. But with a for-profit business, no. I think they actually a for-profit business. A lot of times they have the systems down pretty good,
But they have
and
no clue about the idea and the offer. It's a
well, I
convoluted mess.
wouldn't. Yeah, I think no clue is a little harsh. I think yeah, I think it gets a little confusing because
Yes.
there's competition in the space, whereas in a nonprofit, yes, there's sometimes competition, but you're often serving a niche that's not been served, so it just allows you to kind of move on. Whereas in a for-profit business, there's always lots of competition, and that you have to keep redefining the niche if you're a small business, so that it gets your niche gets smaller and smaller, so that you can better define your offering. So, good. I mean, is how long have you been doing this 5-star process now?
So I developed this 5-star success blueprint I want to say about 6, 7 years ago, when
Mm-hmm.
it first kind of came to fruition, because I just recognized the pattern, because that's how my brain works. And then my problem that I needed to solve, and where this came from, is that as a subject matter expert in business building, what I found is that when somebody talks to me, I immediately see all the different steps. And what I did, Steve, I do what I call a knowledge vomit. So I vomited all my knowledge onto my poor clients all at once, and they were completely overwhelmed. They go like, I don't even know what am I going to do with all of this. It's like 6 years worth of work. So I had to figure out how to take the knowledge and bake it into a loaf of bread, take a bread knife and cut it into slices and say, okay, everybody calm down. Here's the first one. Here's the second one. Here's the third one. And that creates a much larger success. And this is probably true for a lot of business, including nonprofits, that you want to do too much and you want to give too much and you overwhelm people because you assume what you know is what they know. They don't. So you have to take this knowledge that you have and bake it into your knowledge bread, and then cut it into slices and say, what's consumable for the people we are serving? And then push that out slice by slice by slice. That's where it comes from.
What do you think? What would you say to somebody who said, "Okay, I got the process now, so I'm just going to go and I'm just going to go implement it"? What do you think the value is of having someone like yourself working closely with the nonprofit?
It's like with everything else, is I don't see my own blind spots. It's impossible. I work with coaches, consultants. I have a mindset coach. I work with a high performance coach. I have somebody who, when I go to the gym, who trains me because I have a neck injury. I mean, there's certain things I just know I can't know it all. So my assessment is simple. Am I going to put time or money in it? And what is it worth it to me? So yes, of course, people can figure this out on their own. I mean, there's enough information out there. You can become one of those professional conference goers that goes from one conference to another conference, always chasing the next big idea. And a lot of people are figuring out some of these things on their own, or they're naturally good at something. The advantage of working with an expert, very much like you're a financial expert, helps them with solve the financial issues and makes this line of credit available only when they need it. And I loved what you said: get it when you can, not when you need it, because when you need it, nobody's going to give you money.
Yeah.
So, it's a simple principle. but they don't think about it like that. They need someone like you to tell them that ahead of time, so that when that happens, they don't go, man, I should have done this when I had the cash flow, and now I don't, and now nobody's giving me any money. And
Yeah. I mean, I would add two things that you said, and you hit the nail right on the head. I had a personal coach for my business for 9 years. And, you know, the good thing about having someone work closely with you is they keep you on track because, let's face it, executive directors are getting pulled all over the place, and you kind of need someone to hold you accountable outside because you're the leader, and you need somebody who is going to, outside of the firm, say, hey, you said you were going to do this, you didn't do it, in a nice way, of course. So that's number one. And number two is what the fact of the matter is you are dealing with all different types of businesses and nonprofits. And so you can take all of that knowledge and, really help your clients because
shortcuts.
you are dealing with lots of different issues, and you've seen it before. So, that's what the value is, bringing somebody out. Like I always say this, the coach that you bring on board, they should be paying for themselves by multiples.
Yes.
Because, if you have $1 million nonprofit right now and you want to, get to 5 million in 2 years, the fact that you're paying your coach, whatever it is, that's peanuts compared to going from 1 million to 5 million.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're really talking about helping your clients, which of course are the people you serve or the program you're going, the problem that you're trying to solve in our society. So, I think it makes a lot of sense if you have the right person, if you have the right process. I really like what you said today. We have about a minute left. Is there anything else that you would like to add to what you've talked about today?
Just for anyone who wants to learn a little bit more, obviously, go check out. So we'll put this in the show notes, I suppose. And
Yep.
I've written an insights paper called The Future of Leadership, A Return to Humanity. That is not specific for nonprofits. There were some nonprofit organizations that were participating. And I really looked into this as to what some of the things are that leaders need to watch out for now, specifically, in the crisis, the aftermath of the crisis. And you can find that at diversify.world. I certainly encourage anyone who's listening to your beautiful and excellent and informative podcast to not just take you up on your offer to get the credit line while they can, but to also reach out to me personally. I'll be more than happy to schedule a complimentary uncovery session and just find out if anything I can do to support you in growing your nonprofit organization. I'd be more than happy to do that with anyone who reaches out from your podcast. Steve, we are here to help each other. There's enough for everyone, and working with nonprofits is a incredibly rewarding job because we help making an impact in the world in our way.
I agree. I totally agree. And we really need that today. I'd like to thank very much Beate Chelette from Chelette Enterprises for coming on today's podcast. If you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend and also subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. If you like today's podcast, please give us a review on your podcasting app to help get the word out. The Nonprofit MBA has become very popular. I'm very proud of it. I'm getting comments all the time about how helpful it is. If you're looking for a line of credit for your nonprofit, you can call us at 862-207-4118 or visit our website at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. Beate, again, if people want to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
I'll do something really shocking. I'm going to give you my actual email. It's the letter B, the letter C, at beatechelette.com. Just reach out, and I'll promise I'll answer all my emails personally.
And what's your website again?
beatechelette.com.
Yeah. Great. So thanks. It was a great podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
And to all listeners out there, thank you for making the world a better place. You all our listeners do their part every day. And, we're all trying to do our parts, or at least Beate and I are trying to do our parts every day, I'm sure, which we all need to contribute. We're all in this together, and we're all human, and we all need to do our part in making the world a better place. Everybody have a fantastic day, and thank you for listening.